Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever episode of Yes and, the podcast about all things Arcadia Theatre. My name is Zara Peters, and I will be your host. I'm an acting BFA major with a double minor in creative writing and psychology here at Arcadia University. I am so excited to introduce you to our nook of the theater world. Some things you can expect from this podcast are fun interviews with faculty and students about everything from our upcoming shows to the art of theater itself. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our first guests here on the podcast, Jonathan Shandell and Kevin Glaccum. So, do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jonathan Shandell. I am co-director of the Theater Arts program here at Arcadia, and I am also the resident dramaturg for Arcadia Theatre Productions, and I served as the dramaturg in collaboration with a number of students in the program for the Laramie Project.
Awesome. And I'm Kevin Glaccum. I'm the artistic director of the theater program at Arcadia University and the director of the production of the Laramie Project.
Amazing. So, if you could not guess, today we are going to be discussing a lot about the Laramie Project, which is our upcoming production here at Arcadia, which is by Moises Kaufman, awesome, which is happening November 16th through the 19th here on campus in the Little Theater. I'm sure there'll be more details about that wherever this is posted. Spoiler alert, we'll probably be spoiling stuff that happens in the play, but don't let that discourage you from coming to see the shows. Okay, so could one of you give me a brief little synopsis about what the Laramie Project is all about?
Sure. The Laramie Project is a documentary theater piece that chronicles the visit of a group called the Tectonic Theatre Project to Laramie, Wyoming, which was the site of the murder of Matthew Shepard in the late 90s. And the play is all about what they discover about how that crime came to be and what the community of Laramie is all about and how they can make sense of what happened there and get to know the people who live there and study there and work there. It's really about this theater company's investigation and discovery into the reality of a crime that seems to be sort of beyond comprehension.
Thank you. Why do you think that the Laramie Project was such an important pick for Arcadia University?
I picked Laramie actually for very personal reasons. I love the play. I think it's an extraordinary piece of writing. I love the idea of nonfiction theater, of it being, these are actual interviews from people in Laramie, Wyoming. I have a personal connection to the play. I saw the original production in 2000 in New York with Tectonic Theatre and was deeply moved by it. The story revolves around the murder of a young University of Wyoming student named Matthew Shepard, who was beaten to death basically because he was gay. And unfortunately, I think there's a resonance to that and that level of hate against the LGBTQ plus community in this country that makes it, unfortunately, still a very relevant story for us to tell.
Mm-hmm. This is obviously a very, difficult show to be doing. So with that in mind, what is that like for both of you to, research upon and, direct because it's based off of real events? How does that, change from how you would go about directing or researching a different production?
It was painful to do research on this and to learn more about Matthew and his life before this incident, which I'm sorry to say I was not overly familiar with. It's sad, a life cut short like that. But what I think the piece does, as I think all good theater does, is to give us a variety of perspectives that we can all sort of connect to in one way or another and leave us with a bit of hope. The show absolutely, for as dark as the subject matter may appear, there is a sense of a positive future ahead that the play gives us.
Yeah.
And I would also add that I think part of the goal of the piece is discovery into our shared humanity around what seems like such an inhuman act. The members of the Tectonic Theatre company who conducted these interviews and who wrote the piece went there with an open mind, not to condemn anyone, not to sit in judgment, and not to sort of wallow in the tragedy of it all, but to really try to discover and use their artistic process to know more about the people who are connected to this news event in a way that I think they were finding that the news coverage of it and the public debate about it were lacking. Mm-hmm. And I believe that the play really does uncover that, even with relation to the people who were accused and ultimately convicted of the crime, and to the members of the community who perhaps had some culpability in the culture of homophobia and anti-gay violence that fostered such a thing. They go without judgment, and they go to learn, and they go to listen, and they go to try to kind of find a human connection. Mm. And then the staging of the play is an attempt to allow the audience to have a similar kind of process where they get a path of human connection to people that might seem culturally different than them, politically different than them, different in terms of their identity. And it shows sort of the power of theater to connect people to one another across divides. And I think that's also kind of a hopeful and potentially positive outcome.
That's really amazing. So to go along that similar vein, to go into specifics, going into the process of doing the actual show, what is that like to, and how do you go about directing the actors who are playing real life people? What kind of, is there like a level to which you kind of encourage them to balance finding things for themselves, and also like how do you walk the line, or encourage them to walk the line between being accurate to the actual person and finding that meaning for themselves?
It's a great question. I think because most of the people are not well-known figures, it's not like they were they needed to do some kind of an impersonation of someone. Mm-hmm. I mean, the only sort of well-known individual possibly in the show is the governor of Wyoming at the time. Everyone else is just a member of the community. And so we talked about just what we learned about the characters from the script. What does the script tell us about these people? And that was the jumping off point. And so then one of the reasons I picked this show for this program is because it's 10 actors. It's normally 8. I cast 10 because I wanted more people in the show who play, well, I don't know, 120 people. So everyone is playing multiple characters throughout the show. And I just thought it was an extraordinary challenge for people in our program to try and learn how to make character, how to build character from very small pieces and be able to differentiate those on stage so that the audience can say, oh, now that's the teacher, oh no, that's the cop, without it being a huge costume change or anything else like that. It's very actor driven.
That was another question on my thing about the structure of the show being so unique in that regard, of having so few actors play so many different characters. What is that like to, like, how complicated is that to direct?
It was a little complicated. Because I expanded the cast by 2 members. When Tectonic did it, they did it with 8, and we're doing it with 10. And so when you read the play, at the front of the play, it says which actors should play which characters. And I kind of threw that out the window and started from scratch. And in some ways, that was a real relief for me, because there were actors that I know here in school, like, no, he would be better at this, and she's going to definitely play that. And it may not have lined up the way Tectonic had done it. So in that way, I was able to get it how I would like to see it happen. It was a little bit of a Rubik's Cube in that I would assign people, and then I would get to like the middle of the 3rd act and realize that someone had a scene with themselves, and have to sort of go back and reassign something to make sure that didn't happen. So it took me a little while, but I'm very pleased with how it all played out, and who is playing who feels really right on.
I'm beyond excited to see the designer run on Sunday.
Oh, great. I'm glad you'll be there.
So very excited for that. I'm also excited. This is not on my list of questions, but I'm doing projections for the show, so I'm really curious about that aspect of that.
Okay.
Just for my own personal curiosity, but also I think that's a really cool thing that we're kind of incorporating into the show, of because correct me if I'm wrong, but there's going to be TVs on stage and TVs over the aisles to kind of do close-ups during the performance, correct?
Yeah, it's not really about close-ups of the actors. There is a live camera that will be on. I mean, one of the things that the play really touches on is that when this murder took place, it was a huge media storm that happened. And Laramie is a small university town in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, basically. And they were inundated by the press, national, international press. There are speeches in there where the spokesperson of the hospital where Matthew was taken talks about, like, one day I was there were 2 people with cameras. The next day there were 15 video cameras and blah. So there's a real sense of this being this firestorm of media attention. And I really wanted to make the audience feel that by seeing a bunch of television screens and seeing how widespread the news coverage of this was.
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited for that.
Yeah, it should be pretty cool.
It's going to be really, really cool.
Yeah.
Going back over to kind of the foundation of getting this play ready to go, what was the most difficult part to get information on about this show? Because I know that there's a lot that was, like, publicized in the media and all this kind of stuff, but what did you find the most difficult? Either it could be, like, emotionally difficult or just, like, physically difficult to get information on.
I would say that one of the big challenges that I hope we were able to meet was to be able to allow the cast to understand how different the world was in 1996 than it is now, surrounding questions of sexual identity, sexual preference, gender identity, and allow to be able to let the cast have a pathway into what that world was like. Thankfully, much is better and more open and more tolerant than it was then. And but to be able to fully enter the world of the play and understand the stakes around the events that are depicted, we need to kind of go back in time to a time when same-sex marriage was not legal, when there were not legal protections against hate crimes against gay people and so forth. And partly it was Matthew Shepard's killing and the changes that came out of it that helped create that change. So we want to go back to the world before that happened and sort of try to understand the culture and be able to understand it, I guess, kind of without a judgment, without the production making it seem like, look at how superior we are to those people back then, but to be able to fully understand where in history this time sits. And so Kevin and I talked about that as a challenge before the rehearsals began. We did our best to collect some information. Thankfully, there's a lot on the web that even persists of news articles and such that can be found to see how it was covered at that time. And we put together a bunch of resources that I hope were very helpful for the cast, but to kind of think through that historical lens rather than through the lens that we look through today took some effort.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm interviewing some of the cast next Monday and some more of the cast another time next week. So I'm definitely going to be asking them a lot about those kinds of things. Because I know that's been like really, like that's been a point of, not struggle, but it's been definitely like a point of trying to kind of deal with that, which I know, like, I've known people who have done other shows, not similar, but like dealing with very difficult topics and having to try and validate that in your character and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I can imagine that'd be very difficult. Going back to more just general about you two as artists, what in general are your respective processes like? Like, how do you specifically go about dealing with a new production?
I'm a script-based director. I always go back to the script. I have had the pleasure over the years of my career to work with playwrights, work on new plays, and so I know what goes into the process of shaping a final play, and I try as much as possible to honor what the playwright has put on the page. And that's always my jumping off point. This was a little bit of a challenge for me physically, the physical production of it, just because the little theater is aptly named. It's a small stage, and to get 10 actors on there playing all these different characters, it's
a lot,
a little bit like playing traffic cop, like getting people on and off appropriately. And so I spent a lot of time thinking before I even started rehearsal about how I wanted it to look, how I wanted it to move, as it were. Because again, it's a nonfiction piece. It feels like it moves at the pace of a news event, and so there is a quickness to it that I wanted to make sure was infused into the production. And again, the video is going to help us with that as well.
Yeah. So are you a visual kind of person when it comes to that kind of stuff as well? Do you kind of visualize like things in your head for the show?
I do, and I did a little bit of research on some previous productions, and I kept going back to the script and back to the script, and then I met with the set designer and said, this is what I know I need. I know I need levels. I know I need things that can move and become other things. So that's was the jumping off point for us, and that's how we started. And they came back with a really clever design, I think, that kind of incorporated what I had asked for. And then it's the thing I love about making theater is it's incredibly collaborative. And so I went back again and asked them to tweak something else, and then the lighting designer weighed in on something, and we tweaked something else. And so it all comes together really pretty beautifully, I think. I'm very happy with how the set's going to look.
Yeah, I was beyond excited because I'm the intro to backstage class currently with Rob.
Okay.
So when Rob laid out all the stuff and was walking us through where everything is gonna go, I was like, this is gonna be really cool because we were been learning about the single point perspective at the same time in theater history.
It all comes together. I was like,
I know what this is. And then we made the mountain and everything like that, and
awesome.
we're cutting it out. So I'm very excited to see what this is. The set is gonna look really cool. So you guys should come and see it.
Awesome.
But how about you, Jason?
So as a dramaturg, it always also begins with the script, reading the script, trying to think about its possibilities as a piece of literature, as a blueprint for production, and what the range of possible meanings it can have will be. I also, as I read a script, really think about what kind of historical reference points, information, ideas are going to be helpful for the team of artists, including the director and the designers and the cast, to be able to fully embody what the script calls for. And sometimes there's a lot of historical references that need looking up and defining, and sometimes there are things that are not explicit in the script but need to be researched in order to kind of put the play in the right context. And that also comes through with conversations with the director. And in addition to kind of serving what the play offers, it's a dramaturg's job to serve the director's concept for the production. So I need to be able to do research and collect information and have a critical eye toward what Kevin wants to achieve as a director. If I'm off in a different direction from the way he's trying to shape the production, I'm not going to be useful, right? So in this case, since Kevin is such a text-based director, those two things align very, very closely. And it was really a lot of work in the text, and the history and the context is so particular here that that we were pretty much in agreement when thinking about what kinds of areas of research needed to be done. Then that's all collected and presented at first rehearsal to the cast and the crew. And I like to make websites. So there's a sort of a website with a bunch of resources, links to more information that allows the cast and others to kind of explore all the relevant context in whatever way is most meaningful to them. Each actor, based on what their role is, which parts they're playing, might want to look at some different things that are more pertinent to their roles, and the website sort of allows for that. And so that's a lot of the early preparation. Then as rehearsals go on, ideally I'm there every so often checking in and seeing how things are going. And the rhythm of the academic semester, I don't get to do that as much here at Arcadia as I would like to. but then sitting in on run-throughs. I'm going to come to the run on Sunday, give the director some notes of some observations of here's what I'm seeing, here's what I have questions about, here's what I think you might want to look at the next time you rehearse this scene, those sorts of things, so that the director has an outside eye to be able to understand how the production is coming across, how it's working, and perhaps have an informed point of view on where adjustments could be made. And then also to be there throughout the process to answer questions, queries that come up, things about the script that we didn't anticipate that the actors or the creative team have questions on, and being able to supply answers and be a consultant in that regard.
Yeah, I honestly didn't know before coming here that like dramaturgy was like a thing, which to me was fascinating because I've always been like the history English kind of person, which I think a lot of us in the theater are. But when I remember last year when walking in for Trailblazers, because I also didn't really know you then either, but going in to seeing that slideshow, I was like, this is actually so incredibly helpful, because there was like stuff that I hadn't thought about, or like I had thought about, but like not that in depth. Like when we were talking about for springtime, when we were talking about like Greta, and we like decided that she had emphysema, that was our decision, that was her illness, and I was like, this is actually really helpful, because I just would have just thought it was an illness, which I think came a lot into like just like my learning experience as an actor. So getting that into that more, and then like taking theater history now, like I'm like, this makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad
I feel like I'm learning a lot.
For a piece like this, it's incredibly helpful because I remember when this happened.
Yeah.
But for everyone in the cast, it's an historical event.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I asked Jonathan to do for the dramaturgy was to give us some cultural references that may be new for people, you know, and so especially in terms of like LGBTQ stuff, it's like, you know, Will and Grace had just come on the air. This is before Queer Eye. This is before RuPaul's Drag Race. Like, just like the visibility of the community was
Minimal.
much less than it is right now. And then there are small things in the script that actually took us both a bit by surprise. At one point, a character says, I ran to the nearest house to get help. Like, it's because he didn't have a cell phone. You know, so you forget these things. It's I should mention at this point, and this had absolutely nothing to do with the selection of this for this year. It's the 25th anniversary of this event. This happened 25 years ago. So the second day of rehearsal was the 25th anniversary of Matthew's death.
Man.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how that kind of felt.
It was pretty powerful.
Doing that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the majority of my questions. If you guys have anything else you'd like to say about the show, Arcadia Theater in general, anything?
I'll just repeat that I'm very thankful for some of the students who are on our audience services work study team who helped me compile all the information for the website. And we are, in addition to having dramaturgy for the cast and the crew and the creative team, we're also this year trying to do more to give that information to our audiences as well, so that we can have people watch the show from an informed point of view and be able to get some of that context and to shape how they see the production. And we've done that to a certain extent a lot, but to have students as partners in that is new for me this year, and I'm really, really grateful for it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I would just say I would encourage people to come and see the show. The cast is doing extraordinarily good work, and
I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good night in the theater. So please come and join us.
Yeah, you heard it here. Come see Laramie, November 16th through 19th. Correct?
Yes.
Awesome, amazing. Thank you guys so much. I said guys. Thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. This is going to be the first of hopefully many, knock on wood, episodes of Yes and. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Yay! And cut.